5, let's call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes from June 9th and August 11th. If everybody recalls, June 9th was just the park tour, so there was an official agenda really for that meeting.
Move approval.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
No? Very good. Public discussion of any items not on the agenda. See anybody here, so we'll move right on to item 4 with Julie's presentation on the CIP budget.
Great. So what I'm going to do today is you have packets in front of you. I'm going to show it up on the screen, but because the screen's a little small, you have everything in front of you that was also from the show. I'm going to take you back through the Park Master Plan from 2017 and update where we're at, what we've gotten accomplished, what's left very quickly, hopefully. And then we're going to go through kind of some more specifics on the playgrounds that we have yet to address and other park projects. It's not a formal telling you exactly what's going to be proposed in the CIP budget at this point, but I want to give you a general overview and take any comments you may have in a couple different areas, anywhere you want actually, but a couple different areas, and then like when we get to the playground part, talking about, we'll show you why we prioritized it the way we did and some of those things. So the master plan was done after a long public process back in 2017, and it's been guiding our work for the last almost 6 years. And incredible, because we have a lot to show for the work that's been done and the investments made based on this plan. Just to remind you, we just have the diversity. We value diversity as a community asset. We're committed to creating inclusive park spaces that promote the dignity and respect of all users. I'm bringing this up because we're going to revisit this with the Rec Master Plan. And I think it works for both divisions, but that's what we came up with at the end of the Park Master Plan, is that process. The process that we went through at that time, first of all, we had consultants come in and then we went and walked every single one of our parks with the consultant teams, looking for ADA access concerns, looking at playground conditions, shelter conditions. All of that is on the city website right now under the Park Master Plan, and there is an inventory, but remember it's from 2017, so it has every park and a condition rating for them. Now, we have probably 15 or 20 parks that have been redone since that time, so it's not completely accurate at this point, but it's a good place for us to start with prioritizing things. We also looked at equity, and we have learned so much about how to engage with the equity conversation in the last 5 or 6 years. The way we did it back in 2017 was we looked at the different areas of the community, and we made sure that each year as we're doing projects, we spread out, so we spread them out throughout the community, and we're able to address issues in each of the different neighborhoods. And once again, I think we've done that pretty well. Our projects have been spread out throughout and based on neighborhood meetings each time, which give us a good feel for what the community and the neighbors want. Engaged the public, came up with guiding principles, which we'll go through quickly next. Reviewed our open space planning, however, that was picked up later in the natural areas plan, which is its own separate plan. So it's kind of confusing because we have so many master plans here. This one really only looked at active use outside parks. So parks with playgrounds, shelters, a little bit with athletic fields, but not as much as the Rec Master Plan will. Then we have the natural areas plan, and it looked at any of our property that we have that is primarily passive use. So either for restoration, ecological value, or other purposes. Now we're doing the Rec Master Plan, which looks at the indoor facilities, the swimming pools, and the athletic fields. So we have lots of different plans. This one had looked at future park projects. It looked specifically at access, so we looked for equity, access to the various areas within the park. So a lot of what we've done have been small paved connections between trails, playgrounds, shelters, benches. We've been picking up a little bit of those every single year, trying to make that better. providing year-round support for active living. So we have increased the outdoor activities and things available outside. Restoring places where people can go for quiet. And even within the playgrounds now, we've started to add areas that are close by that provide a little timeout space for people that need it and want some just quiet time in the parks. Educating, we've been working on learn to swim, outdoor recreation skills, working on STEAM. So for instance, tonight down at the market, it's full steam ahead. All kinds of STEAM activities for kids happening along with the market. Sustain, so design choices, which we'll go through, that give us a consistent branding. And then documenting, and that's part of the reason for these reports to the commission every couple of years, to document where we've come, how far we've come, and what's still left. Okay, I already kind of hit that, so I'm going to go on. These were the design guidelines that we came up with in the park master plan. If you've been out to our newer parks recently, I hope they look very familiar to you. The shelters in the smaller pictures are what's at Creekside, Willow Creek, Weatherby, I'm forgetting several that we put in. And then the more modern one is what the design of Riverfront Crossings was based on. So we have implemented this. We are working on still getting all the park signs to match, but we have been chipping away at those, getting a few every year as well. The nice part about Iowa City, this comes from the Trust for Public Land. They do a study that shows kind of a park score for communities, and we're one of the higher ones in the Midwest. 83% of our residents live within a 10-minute walk of a park. So they show you on a map, the next page, the areas in light green, which I think is on here, are areas that are within that 10-minute walk. And then I added the school playgrounds on this particular map, so you can see that in some cases, they may not be within 10 minutes walking distance of a public park, but they are from a playground and area at a school that's available. And some of our areas that don't have that 10-minute walk, it's kind of skewed because it is either like areas around the airport, so that's a large thing, or in some of these areas there are ample university open spaces and park-like amenities. So it doesn't show up in our plan as being within a 10-minute walk, but there actually are some. So I think we're sitting really good as far as mixture of where parks are. This is also interesting because they were able to break it down based on race and ethnicity. And although we're not perfect in all the categories, I like to see how consistent we are down the list. So most are within that 80-85% range. It's kind of skewed because some of them have very low numbers of people in them. But that's a good chart to see this year. Okay, so this chart you've seen a couple times before if you've been on the commission for a while. This outlined what year the plan called for different projects to be completed. And what I did was going through, we'll start by each one that has been. So we are making progress. When you look at 2020, the ones that aren't done there, City Park Upper Shelter, that's been pushed back to a few years later. The West District Park was one that we actually did the planning process on, and the neighbors were not interested in having a park over on like Cape Cardinal area. So that one we have is no longer one that we'll be pursuing. We will be looking at new parks as we showed you in the park tour, either by Stonebridge Estates or Palisades Division, which needs a different name for the park. But, so we have those. And then when you look at 2021, Chad Green will be under, we have our kickoff meeting for design this Friday. Glendale is under construction as we speak. Hickory Hill is pushed back one more year. The next year, Court Hill is set for the same kickoff meeting this Friday along with Whispering Meadows. And so then we get into the other ones, but we are really progressing according to plan. Not exactly year by year, but I think very confidently as we go through these. Any questions so far? Playground distribution, we looked at this 2 years ago. Your recommendations were that indeed it looked like we are pretty well covered between city playgrounds and school playgrounds, and the University Hospital has some playgrounds. Since that time, we have added the poured in place surface at City Park Playground. Weatherby has a little bit poured in place. Willow Creek has poured in place.
I think that's all.
Yeah, so we have updated that, and our ratios are even better than they were 2 years ago, along with making sure that we have access to the actual play area as well. So as you know, Glendale Park, the big thing on that is a big paved trail. That's to provide access to the playground from the street. Okay, so we're gonna go district by district, we'll kind of fly through this and get to the more interesting part. These are the districts the plan used to break up and show us how many parks and what kind of features we had in each area. So the South District, the projects that we have completed so far, Weatherby, Fair Meadows, Napoleon Park improvements. We added a paved path to Weatherby, and we will have the Whispering Meadows Playground and Shelter coming up next summer, along with wetlands restoration and some other work there. This one shows the deficiency shown in the park master plan was need for some additional parkland, meaning smaller pocket parks. That has not necessarily been, we haven't necessarily been able to do that yet. With some of the developments happening with the updated South District plan, so down closer to McAllister, and there was probably some options there, or addition to either like Sam Prairie, Weatherby, and then adding the playground and shelter at Whispering Meadows helps with that deficiency. Improved connections to the parks. The main thing that we're adding that adds to that is finally getting the trail built along Highway 6, Highway 1, between Hines and all the way to Broadway eventually. And although that doesn't exactly go right to a park, it's important for access to a number of lower income communities in that area.
Isn't there, so it's more than a sidewalk you're talking about, you're talking about the much wider.
Yeah, it's we received some grant funding from the DOT, so it'll be a DOT spec transportation trail. Similar to was put in closer down by Walmart.
I think it's 10 foot wide. I think that whole stretch will eventually be 10 foot wide.
The South District, it's really been interesting to work with in the last few years because they have a very active neighborhood group that has been advocating for things and being very vocal when we ask questions, which is so helpful for us when we want to do projects. So that's where we're at. Any questions on the South District? No. Greg, you want to get that door? Okay. The Southeast District. Another area that has some real potential for growth. The projects on the southeast side, finished Cardigan in 2019, Creekside, which is down McPherson Park in 2020, Scott Park Playground and Shelter, Court Hill Basketball Court was resurfaced, and then the playground and shelter will be next year. So I think we're well set for playgrounds access and in general access to parks, because we also have Windsor Ridge, which is more of a trail park with open space. The opportunities, the American Legion Road Tunnel, Trail Tunnel, and that is coming in this project that they're working on right now, so it will connect the new elementary school to the neighborhoods with a safe route under the road. In East Side Sports Complex, the ground is still there. We haven't moved forward on any of it, but that is one of the questions we're looking at with the rec master plan, having people prioritize where do new baseball, softball, soccer, outdoor athletic fields come in priority when compared to city swimming pools and aquatic centers. So more to come on that, and I think that will help prioritize or move that forward. The West Central District. This one was interesting because when we talked about this 2 years ago, it seemed very likely that there was going to be a very substantial development west of 218. We thought that even earlier this year. That's been put on hold at the moment. They're going to do some different things, so not sure what's going to happen with that. We really only have one major park in the western area, that's Hunter's Run Park. The deficiency would say add parkland west of Gorman Trek. It's difficult to do due to a number of land use things in that area. We do have West High there. You have three different elementary schools that kind of serve that area over on the west side. And so that's really where we're at on that. County is still working on their poor farm development plans, and that may have some impact for us for trails and other uses. That's a fairly large open parcel within that district. Are you all able to hear me pretty well through this mask? Okay, I'm just checking this. All right, the central district. Deficiencies here, we're lacking parkland, but this is one of the primary areas where they didn't include the University of Iowa open spaces, and there's a lot of it in this district. And improving Ralston Creek was a deficiency, and we've been kind of hammering away at that little by little, chipping away, I should say, working on that. But the projects here, the big one, Riverfront Crossings Park, adding accessibility paths at Highland, and it actually had a new playground put in the year before this plan happened. So it's got a fairly new playground. Glendale Park happening now. The Bocce Court happened this summer. Chatting Green is next year. Hickory Hill, the Conklin entrance, new shelter, and everything is the year after. So I really think we're on track with this area. The Penwell project, just for an update on that since that's listed here. We have received 3 different playground manufacturers' proposals for equipment for the Penwell, and we're working on getting a meeting scheduled with the steering committee to look through those 3, choose one, and then we'll be able to move forward with getting it ordered. So we're looking at spring for the install. Luckily, the current playground is held out this summer. We have one slide that's kind of on its last legs, but we should make it through this summer anyway.
Are you going to go with just one manufacturer for the whole, all
Yeah.
the piece?
Yeah, well, for the Penwell play, yeah, and that's typical. Usually their proposals are Penwell all or nothing.
Okay.
It's really hard to buy a piece, you know.
Got it.
On the West District, so City Park, Black Spring Circle Park, Tower Court Park. Deficiencies, add park amenities near Sunset and Benton Street, which is close to Benton Hill Park. That's difficult, and it's difficult with the connections in that area because of the street. There's been improvements made to the street, but even trying to add bicycle infrastructure there has been difficult. It does say add a mini park in Mandel Heights, but I do not believe that means the marching band field, because that is so close to City Park. And this plan did maybe not take into account the area around the Ashton House, which Project Green has done so much to develop for us as an outdoor use space. So I would say that really helps with that mini park type thing. Improve the connections. So projects there, Willow Creek in 2019, and we will be looking at the Willow Creek Trail in the future. We have a big tree planting that will happen there, thanks to the Rotary Club. So a lot happening there. City Park Adventure Play is open, Villa Park on the west side, cabin restorations, and then we're planning shelter replacements. Just a note on the City Park shelter replacements, we don't plan on asking to replace every single shelter that's there. I think we've talked about this before. We've been looking at use statistics of how many are being used and when. So we're going to consolidate into fewer, hopefully better shelters and restrooms just to make it more efficient for use. North District. So this one does have a need for parkland west and north of Dodge Street, south of I-80. Park facilities near Scott and Rochester. Well, it appears that with the new Hickory Hill development, the development happening near Hickory Hill, they are probably going to back off from their full development proposal and focus focus on the senior living facility. So I don't have a map to show you yet or anything, but it does appear that we will get a substantial addition to Hickory Hill Park in that area. So I think that helps with the parkland in that area.
Do you know when they're taking that to all the different committees? Don't they have to go to the rezoning again and all
Yes.
that? Okay.
I've been advised that I can share with you as a commission once they have the staff information ready for that. And I don't know if that's next week
Yeah.
or 2 weeks from now, but I will try to email it out to you all so you can see it.
I think it starts with the Good Neighbor meeting again. I believe it's
Oh, all the way back?
there.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Interesting.
So they'll need the whole process and move again.
So in this one, the projects we've done are the Pheasant Hill Playground, Providence Miller Park, Happy Hollow Shelter and Restroom. We have other ones coming up. Happy Hollow will be the playground coming up in a few years. And then Terrell Mills Skate Park is scheduled for 2023. As you remember last month, I mentioned that we put in a grant application for that project. Today we received word that we have made it through the preliminary round, along with a list of about 20 things we need to add before next week to send it out in the next round, which we will bring together. So we are in the running for getting a $600,000 federal grant to match our $600,000, which would make it a $1.2 million renovation expansion of Terrell Mill if we get it. So it would still stay in that 2023 or 2024 timeline based on the federal calendar when the grant money would be available. But it's encouraging and we're moving forward with some of that work.
And of those 20, how many will be? Is it just one or is it like top 3?
Oh, no. They have 20 more questions.
Oh, okay,
that we have to
gotcha.
get into. We are the only one that is being put forward by our state. They could have put up to 4 grant proposals to the feds. So
That's great.
I would say our chances are pretty good if they like our project. So
Great.
okay, so I'm going to turn this next part over to Tyler. We're going to walk you through the playgrounds that haven't been addressed yet. And I will mention that you won't see Court Hill, Glendale, or Penwell on this, even though they're in not very good condition. But since those are already in the works for replacement, we won't go there. Well,
If you wanted to go, I can stand here. So while she's getting it up, a few of us looked at each of these in depth on staff individually, and then compiled our results of what spaces we all thought needed the most attention the soonest, whether it was maintenance or aesthetics or whatever it happened to be need in a specific area. So 3 of us looked at it and we compared our lists, and they were actually really similar, averaging them out, and then kind of taking a few other things into consideration. There may be a button that you can page view. And then, yes, no, maybe hit the minus button. Yeah, get them all in one. Okay. So at least you can see all the pictures on then. So Kiwanis was the overall #1 need for improvements. Very well loved playground, but we have a lot of issues there. You can kind of see in the photos, the wood timbers are deteriorating really fast in all the areas. So that is a very big need. Accessibility, we've tried to make some improvements over the years. It was not designed in a time that got us as good of accessibility to each of our features as we try to get now. So you can see there's a ramp on this one. It does, whether there's an accessible route to that ramp, is another question. There's sand in some of the spots as well. We don't tend to have sand in very many of our other parks. Maybe it could still be a feature, but there's quite a bit of issues. If you go to the next page, there's some more photos. So you can see there's erosion, there's broken pieces, just general deterioration of all the parts. The paint's not in great shape. So I think the idea would probably be if the neighborhood wanted this, something natural type playscape again. So it's a well-loved, like I said. I know a lot of people who have told me over the years that they loved it when, you know, their kids were little or if they were younger. It's kind of a nice little place there. Someone recently pointed out to me how quiet it is. You can't hear the interstate, which you usually can from there, so it's a nice park. The next one, Happy Hollow. We've got major cracks starting to form. It's still safe at this point in the one slide. So this moved this up on the list, maybe over the next one, mainly because of that slide. It's a similar slide we had to replace in another park. And by the time you replace that slide, you're pretty much at a high enough cost. It's time to replace the rest of the equipment because there's some other deficiencies and you know, things starting to fail as well. So Happy Hollow, and then we've got College Green. This is one of our oldest, if not our oldest, I believe, remaining playground. Structurally, it's in okay shape, but aesthetically, it could use some help. All the paint's peeling. You know, there's a few dents here and there in pieces. So it just needs an update. You know, kids of all ages enjoy it, so it'd be a nice one.
Very diplomatic.
I've seen college kids swinging in the middle of winter, so it's well used year round. So, and then we have Hunter's Run. So like we you know talked about a little bit ago, Julie saying it's our only kind of west or I guess farthest west district park. One of the play features, I think the next page, is the newer part of the playground. The other one is older. The older one is starting to fade and everything. The newer one, however, has quite a bit of deterioration around the joints. So we'd be looking to replace that, and then you know, moving this one up, it still has some ADA accessibility needs that we want to update there. Those may happen at the same time to make sense in planning that out. So
I think it's safe to say that these four are ones we're going to try to move forward or keep close in the next few CIP years. Some of the next ones that you're going to see were slated for coming years, and we may shuffle those back a ways based on their conditions. So.
yeah, we constantly do that year after year. It's kind of hard to tell. You know, in 2017, this one probably looked in pretty good shape, but it's deteriorated pretty fast. Reno's the next one. Accessibility here as well, getting a path all the way up to a playground. If we position in the same spot or not is one thing. This one's starting to show some wear and tear. The climbing wall we've replaced parts on quite a few times. It's currently safe, but has some spots that are starting to, you know, the connections are breaking and things like that. But we've checked it for safety, and it still passes that. Just really needs to be updated though. Let's see, we've got North Market Square. So this one's heavily used by the school, right next door. So every recess you see kids out there playing. So it's, I'd say mostly because of its heavy use, it made it higher up on the list. But you can see some parts that are starting to wear and show some tear as well. Just in general, and it doesn't really flow very well as far as its footprint and maintenance around it. You know, is more of a challenge. Okay, Brookland Park. Again, accessibility to this one. It's tucked into a hillside with a struggle to get a path to the current one that is the right slopes to me. Full ADA for this one, so another reason why it bumped up the list a bit. Some of the slides are showing somewhere. This is the one that had the slide replaced a few years back that was similar to the one we showed you the crack in earlier. So very heavily used park as well, even though it's kind of just a walk-to park, but there's a daycare right across the road, and they use it quite often. Let's see, where we at now? Benton. So Benton at number 8, this is about right at that point where, 8, maybe 9 are, the most at need right now. So Benton is in okay shape, but it could really use some updates as well. It's showing some age. The treehouse type feature is showing the most age, just the wood, being that material, it deteriorates a little faster.
Do you want to talk about the bees?
Yes.
/ hornets?
Yes, there is currently a very deteriorating bare wooden statue sculpture with a little seating area around it at Benton Hill. We had to eradicate some non-friendly bees. They weren't wasps, they were bees, but we reached out to actually the expert in the county on bees, and he said they weren't beneficial for honey making or anything like that, and they were being very aggressive. So we eradicated those. We will, however, be removing the remainder of the wooden artwork there because of the stage of decay that it's in. Oak Grove. So Oak Grove is a little bit older as well. It probably doesn't see quite as much use. It's in okay shape, good shape I have on there. It's probably one of our oldest ones that is in this quality of shape. However, it'll be, by the time we get to this one at number 9, there'll be a few years yet, and we would expect to see some more harsh deteriorating. You can see on some of the pictures there, like the bottom left, you're starting to get a lot of wear where the kids climb up and down things. Some of those more like rubbery climber, net-like, ladder things, those tend to deteriorate quicker. So it's starting to show signs of that as well. Okay, this one is Harlock Hill, and Harlock Hill, I've seen someone there a couple of times. I guess it's.
This is one when it gets time to replace it. We made the commission to look at it and say, do we keep a playground at this particular location? The only report I've ever had of anyone using it is some of the older students living in those apartments swinging there.
Where is it at?
This is behind Hawk Ridge Apartments. So not the access from Culver's, but the other side of Hawk Ridge is a road that dead ends.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of tucked back in. There actually isn't any public parking around it. So it's just a walk-to park. We don't think it's being used hardly at all. So it doesn't need to be replaced at the moment, but something.
No, there's some fading of items there, but it's in relatively good condition. Just you can tell a little age on it. Calder, it's one of our newest playgrounds that hasn't been done, in our most recent batch, but it is still fairly new. It does have some need for accessible route down the actually quite steep hill, so that would be one of the things that may end up happening before this one is fully replaced. It seems like the features are all in pretty good condition. It's, as you can tell, kind of the grass and stuff creeping in. It doesn't currently have an edging to it like we like in most of our parks. So we tend to put in a concrete edge of some sort, whether it's a full path or like a 6-foot band now. So that might be something that could be added before the rest is updated. But in Calder, we still plan this year to have the fire pit feature as well. So there will be some. It
is on order. It's just taking forever.
It is. So we have that coming up. So there will be. It's not the playground, but a new feature in our park.
We had a request from the neighborhood just over the weekend for, was there a way to do electricity to the shelter? There was a puppet show there last week sometime.
Monday.
Yeah, wanting to know if there's a way to do that. Our best estimate is about $10,000 to put in electric because of the topography and the location. So the answer would be not right now. It's a good idea. But maybe when we do the ADA trail project, it would be more beneficial to try to put those together and do that.
Julie, what about when this park was put in, there was supposed to be like a trail behind those houses. What's the status?
Yeah, we did mow one, I think, for a year or two, and I don't know that that's.
We mow the loop through the grassy space.
Yeah, back behind, like there's some houses and.
Yeah, so it's just a natural trail, we've never
Okay.
pursued it further than that. Okay.
Terry True Blood, it's in relatively good shape. Not a ton of features at this one. Some of the features will continue to deteriorate because they're more natural features, but really in pretty good shape. Not a whole lot wrong with that one. This one is one I don't believe shows up in the Parks Master Plan because we did not have ownership of it yet. This is MJ Harbit up in the Peninsula neighborhood. ADA improvements to the playground would be the thing. And that wasn't ever outlined in any of the plans because we've had ownership for about 2 years, Julie. Features tend to be in pretty good shape, a little worn in some of the high use areas, but it's mostly just, paint and things like that. So it seems like it's pretty well used. Both of the next two are down at Kickers. They are actually in really good shape. The first one you see here is a pretty old, actually, and it's
So it shows up on the master plan as needing replacement, I think, next year. I'm not gonna do that, obviously, it's in really good condition, so.
the only thing I noticed there were some of those rubber ladder features are discolored a little bit, like I mentioned on another one, but it's still in real good shape. The other one there is in even better shape. The thought is maybe when it comes that time to look at, does it make sense to have the two in both spots? Kind of come to you all with suggestions at that point, or does it make sense to consolidate into a space? I don't know the answer to that yet. That's all of those.
Okay. So what we would ask is, if you would be so inclined, if you'd like to have some sort of motion or comments on that playground priority list based on those reports, and we would use that as our basis for shuffling them in or placing them in the future CIP program.
I'll make a motion to accept it as presented.
All in favor?
All in favor?
How is it hard? Okay, so beyond playgrounds, we have a long list of other things. Next, these are other projects that are in the CIP, and I just want to make you aware that they're in there. We talked about the trail along Highway 6. One section is actually in design right now, and then the 2025 will be Broadway to Fair Meadows. So Fair Meadows to Heights is what's under design and will be built next summer. And then this is for 2025. Splash pad improvements, we have slated $100,000 in 2023, and that's primarily for Fair Meadows and Weatherby splash pads. I had a very interesting meeting last week with a rep from the Vortex company that makes those splash pad features. And we learned that we can actually trade out just the features from above ground. And they have new ones that are more water conscious. And that's one of our big issues at Weatherby is it's a huge water user. And although we'd like to maybe switch to a recirculating system in the future, this would probably be enough to at least switch out the equipment so that we would drastically lower the water use there. So that's interesting. The new park development we covered on the park tour, so we have 2 different areas that are slated to come to us through development. And in 2024 and 25, we have some funding available to do some development. And that will likely be trails, shelter, potentially a small playground at the one up north. Just depends on what the neighbors would like and how much space we actually have when we get there. City park shelters and restrooms are already covered. Hickory Hill Conklin entrance doesn't have a playground, so it's not on the playground list. But 2025 to replace that with a shelter and restroom that match the architecture in the other parks. Terrell Skateboard Park and Pump Track we talked about. Mercer Park ball field improvements have money scheduled in 23 and 24. That is one of the questions of the rec master plan, so that may get shuffled based on priorities from that and priorities for the school district as well. Event facility improvements was meant for TTRA and Terry Trublet Lodge and boat rental building there needing exterior refinishing and some other work done on the exteriors of those. Off-road bike trail development down by Terrell Mill Park with a single track. It goes up into some of the property we just got from the Elks Golf Club last year. And then the Willow Creek Trail replacement. The main trail through Willow Creek has serious cracking and structural issues, so it would be a replacement of that entire trail. So those are the things that are in the current plan. Here's things we know about that are not in the current plan to consider it. After we go through this, let me know if you can think of any other things you've seen through the parks that we maybe missed. We have a master plan for Lower City Park that includes raising the road, making it more flood tolerant, draining, moving the ponds so we have a wetland area. It's got a pretty hefty price tag. It was done in 2016 and it's kind of, we've been doing smaller parts of that plan all along, but that would be to go back and do something larger there. Eastside Sports is a sports complex with baseball, softball. This group has talked some about a preference for having maybe an indoor field facility or something there too. That's on that list. Sand Lake at Terry Trublet. We've known for some time that it could use some dredging. Kayakers would know. There's areas that are 4 feet or less deep at this point. It's silted in over the years. A couple $1 million probably to do the whole thing. So we've been kind of looking at that and figuring out is there a way that we can propose doing part of it, maybe by the boat rental area, break it off into different parts to make it more be able to accomplish. But that's a large ticket project.
Julie, is there some grant money and some kind of like REAP funding for like water management there or something?
There's been some smaller grants, but nothing to the degree.
The size.
Yeah. So, not yet. We are watching for that. Riverside Festival stage, the Riverside Theater just finished their summer performance series there. It's in need of some serious TLC. It's falling apart in some places. We have not budgeted for that yet. We're going to look at it actually probably this week and get a better idea of what needs to be done. And Tyler, can you add anything to that?
Yeah, 2020 was a little rough on it too, I think, with not much use. It started to deteriorate faster than anyone noticed at the time. Just multiple issues, and it's a constantly changing space. They're putting up set features, taking them down, attaching them to things, unattaching them. So it really takes a lot of wear and tear just from that alone.
Trail bridges throughout this, City Park tennis court repairs. We have some ideas for making that a better playing surface and a better experience at City Park. We're gonna get ready to do that. It hasn't been on any list for quite a while. The trail bridges throughout the system, we have a number of small trail bridges that are deteriorating. We have inspected them all now, so we know what condition there are, and some of them might need to be replaced next year. They're in that type of condition. You may have seen the press release that the bridge at Fort Hill Park is closed this week. That's actually not the bridge. That's the under the ground underneath and around it that is kind of sledged off. So the Public Works is working on that. Iowa River Power Dam Bridge, big project. When it's time to redo that, the planking is getting a little suspect. We're working somewhat, Public Works may be doing a project there sooner, and maybe tag on with that. Scott Park.
Is that all Iowa City or
I was
something?
thinking the same thing. Is it Coralville?
The connections on the Coralville side are Coralville's. The engineering and the responsibility for it, I believe, all fall in Iowa City. It was actually Coralville's Parks and Rec director when it was first put in as a trail. So.
We do snow removal across the whole bridge. So that tells me that the agreement probably means the bridge is all ours. And if you look at it now, you might not see a lot of deterioration, but it's a very large cost. So that's one of the reasons why it shows up here too. So
Yeah.
Scott Park, we've done a lot of renovations there last year. We've had requests for accessible parking near the dog park area. In order to do that, we have to have a paved parking lot or at least some paved stalls. So in the short term, we hope to do a small project to provide 1 or 2 handicap accessible spaces near the trail. Long term, though, we should look at that. It's just a chip seal parking lot that gives a lot of use. So. The next one I'm going to show you pictures of. I don't know if you are aware of this, but the city owns this lovely home. This is up on the hillside above Dubuque Street by the north of the water treatment plant, just south of the parking lot for Waterworks Prairie Park. It is an older home that the Historic Preservation Commission has had some interest in. At one time, it was the home of someone who ran a ferry crossing down the river below. It is not on the National Registry of Historic Places, and it hasn't met the criteria for that. There was a fairly large study and public input process done on this back in the early 2000s when Iowa City built the water treatment plant. Because of the federal funds involved, and this was one of the properties on site. And at that time, they really didn't come to very many conclusions, some ideas, and some pretty large price tags. It has been breached several times. I don't have all the pictures of the graffiti and whatnot that's on the inside. I didn't walk much past the entrance, to be honest with you. It is locked up now and secure. It's had a new roof put on it probably 8, 9 years ago, maybe, even
I
that.
don't know exactly.
To make it weather tight and preserve it. I'm just not sure for what. Some of the ideas that we've gone through is, could it be a trailhead for the trail? It's kind of way back up. It's not really a good access for trail. The parking would be down below where there already is parking for the rest of the trail system. It doesn't have connections right now to water and sewer. It's a septic system.
It's really,
Yeah.
this feels like more of a nuisance, like even in a legal sense, a nuisance than anything that would be worth keeping up. And it obviously, or it sounds like it has no historical value. So why hasn't the city condemned it? Well, you don't have to condemn it. The city owns it. Why didn't the city just tear it down?
Because of the questions from the Historic Preservation Commission would probably be my best answer. There's a few people that do have an interest in it.
Well, they're welcome to buy it from the city.
So I think that would be, this would be one thing that if you felt so inclined to, make a comment or motion on, it could be whether or not you have an interest in looking into preserving it and transforming it into a use, or whether you feel like it's better to maybe walk away from it.
Could the city sell it? Could they parcel it off from?
No, we cannot, my understanding is we can't do that because it's part of the water treatment plant facility.
Doesn't seem to be meeting any of the sort of mission that we've discussed at the beginning of this whole process, so it seems, like maybe.
What is the Historic Preservation Committee talking about with it?
They had come up with the ideas of could it be restored and maybe become some other, like either nonprofit use, or could it be a concession area for the trail system? And once again, it's kind of tucked back there, and I don't know that it would.
Yeah, it's not a
That
very good
sounds-
location.
And that sounds very unreasonable considering
Yeah.
where it is.
We've offered that maybe if the idea is to preserve the story and the history of the site, maybe there's a way to deconstruct it and keep, say, a wall or keep parts of it that could be incorporated into a shelter or something either at this site or down by the parking lot area so that it has an open air and it has that story that goes along with the house could be preserved. I think that would be my best recommendation at this point. If we really want to keep the story and keep the historical interpretation of the area.
Did the Parks Commission budget pay for the new roof?
I don't know, because it's probably, but it's been a long time, so I don't know that.
That's probably a $20,000 roof. Yeah.
metal, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not.
So the historical significance is that it once belonged to someone who had a ferry?
Right.
Which was it was an important part of the history of the Iowa River at that time.
But in prior studies, there was no determination that it had enough historical significance to do something with.
Yeah,
And so-
historical landmarks.
And so right now, the potential holdup is that you say some people in the Iowa City Historic Commission have some questions.
Have some interest.
How long have those questions or interest been pending?
20 years.
Okay.
So I was saying it's not interest enough. I mean, it strikes me that this is sort of a problematic building that has no articulable purpose other than like very sort of pie in the sky peripheral ones, like the concession stand next to the water treatment plants. Seems like a little. I mean, I don't need to be flippant, but
Bike trail, there's a walking path.
I mean, at concessions, we don't really have concession stands all around our bike
Not in
paths.
our walking path.
Even our more trafficked ones.
Yeah.
And then, like, the cost of converting this with no water, you said there's no water, no electricity.
Yeah.
And the cost to maintain it, just to check on it, and safety and.
I mean,
maintenance and-
I'd rather get the power for the puppet show.
But I do think it would be a shame to lose that story, like you were saying, Julie. I would hate to just dispose of it because it's kind of a nuisance, but that history of the river is such a big part of the city, and the history of the river, so many people don't have exposure to it. This is just one more way that it tells our story, and I do like the idea that you had, maybe just leave the foundation there with some signage or something that shows.
It would make more sense to have that interpretive thing down in that parking lot where people actually
To get to it.
can get to it, whereas, I don't know, I must have ridden by that thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
But how many people don't know that it's there, even who might go and trek up there? If we had a sign down closer to the trail, they could go look at the remnants of it, if not.
Could we ask the historic commission to like reevaluate it from their side and give us their suggestions that we could at least evaluate like people who have a lot of interest in that historic idea? And then we could at least see if any of them like make economic or practical sense. I mean, it's just, kind of re-engaging that committee, kind of giving them the last chance to have a say, and then we can then move forward with a decision and move forward. Does that make sense?
Mr. Chair, if that's fine with you, I think we've got enough feedback.
sure.
I mean, we could just decide, but we may be,
We need to do like an
There's
official
some friends on it.
motion of what-
I think we've got enough comments in there now that we can, we'll just.
Very good.
Are there any other larger projects that we haven't, I know we've got through this fairly quickly. We do have another list of recreation facility things that are under the master plan, but any other park-related items that you've all seen or thought about and wondered? Where this might be something you need to kind of think on overnight and let me know. We do our best to get throughout the system and see what's out there and see what needs attention, but if you've seen or heard or have an idea of something else that needs attention, I think it would be helpful to get it on our list.
Do you find as a park staff that certain structures hold up better? And do we have a list of like maybe what companies really have a longevity and are better made and kind of we're moving towards a preference in certain vendors?
Yeah, that's exactly what we've been doing with the implementation of the park master plan, and also working towards them being the same, so that we haven't quite
Maintenance.
achieved that yet, but for maintenance, so we have the same toilet in each park and the same hookups. It just makes it easier.
Or for the playground though,
Yeah.
particularly?
Playgrounds, we will probably continue to go from the at least the four major manufacturers. They've all worked out well for us, so I don't know that there's any one in particular that
Stands out?
occasionally we get a problematic product, but it's kind of one-off. It sounds like this. Okay. And then the rec facility projects, there are several CIP budget. These are all though related to the recreation master plan. So as that finishes, that will help prioritize and slate these things into the process. Just a beautiful picture for you to think about. Nice place. Do you have any other, I know that's a whole lot of information. Any other questions about?
How do you determine the usage of a park? I know you mentioned that one of them doesn't seem to have much usage, and obviously the wear and tear you can see, but
Yeah.
is there a way to like count the number of people?
We don't have an official count. Occasionally, we'll do a trail count for trail use, because then you can do a motion. We tend to go on things like amount of garbage in the garbage cans and otherwise, amount of traffic patterns around playgrounds or shelters. You can see where the grass and different areas have been used. And then really just a compilation of staff reports who've been there in that park, and we're at most parks every few
Mowing
days.
the lawn.
Yeah, so they'll notice things and you can kind of tell when humans have been there. But it's not an exact science by any means.
Does the playground break down more quicker if it's used more? Is that why like the Kickers Park is?
Yeah, I guess we said that's my guess of why that one is still in a lot better shape, yes. That can be a factor. And to Julie's point, like a hard count is very hard to get without like a large study. Something in my background through grad school, that's kind of what I did in places. And it took a large team of people, cameras, counters, all of the above, and then sitting there actually taking actual counts at certain hours and stuff. So to get a really scientific count is difficult. But yeah, those other things. Sometimes, our staff knows which playgrounds they have to get to right away in the morning so they can mow them. Otherwise, they won't mow them the rest of the day. And others, they can go at any time of the day and they won't see anyone.
Right. So we're on to item 5 now, the 2022 prairie plantings. Tyler?
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to bring this to you for your recommendation or comments, recommendations, questions tonight. If you remember last year when we did this, we got a lot of public input after the fact, so we have announced this ahead of time, hoping to get some input ahead. But as you'll see, these are a little bit different sites. So.
And this info is live right now on our website, and it will be a press release and social media releases will go out. So people have a little bit of time to comment back if they have any concerns one way or the other. So you can see they're spread out. Peninsula Park, which is basically Thornberry Dog Park area, Terry Trueblood Recreation Area, and Kicker Soccer Park. So Terry Trueblood Recreation Area, currently supposed to be prairie in this location. There are some prairie species. It is not a healthy, functioning prairie ecosystem by any means. A lot of smooth brome, which is nearly impossible to get rid of. Well, it is impossible to get rid of without starting over on those bases. So the south end, we've already, which would be south and west of this, we've already started that process with this last round. So you'll see that starting to improve. And this is kind of the next really main piece. Tons of traffic by that on Gilbert/Sand Road every single day, and really near the entry. There are some spots near the shelter, which is just kind of towards the, right there, that are in decent shape that we hope to, improve and keep and build upon. But this area specifically, we've tried multiple times burning it, overseeding it with more seed, and we just have not been successful with that. So that's one spot. So essentially all these spots, think of it as changing what's currently a grass and some wildflowers to an actual functioning prairie ecosystem with prairie grasses and wildflowers. So the difference is not a lot unless you kind of know what you're looking for, and ecosystem-wise will be a big improvement. Same with that Kicker Soccer park. The area you see there's some, looks like some weird shapes. That's because the cross-country course runs through this. And this was a management decision probably 10 years ago by our then senior maintenance worker and athletic fields to no longer mow all this space that wasn't being used. So it reverted to just kind of brome grass again. Some natives have popped up here and there, but very, very sporadic. So we'd like to improve this for the ecosystem benefits, for a more interesting cross-country run through there, and just to get some more benefit out of that space as well. And then Peninsula Park. So the large piece down here is this is hole 1 of the disc golf, and then the space that goes back from there, going down the hill from Peninsula Development here to the right. There are a substantial number of non-desirable, some invasive, just scrubby trees that have started to grow up in there that we would go in and mechanically remove beforehand. And this spot was always intended to be non-tree because of the water infrastructure in the area. So they've expressed that they would like open sight lines to their well house there, which you'd be able to get with the prairie there. And then signal-wise, the trees tend to mess with some of their signals going between areas is how I interpreted what I've heard from water as well. So it'd be, helping with a couple of things there. It'll also, better filter any of that rainwater falling on that space as well. So getting at a few things here. All these areas, like I said, currently none of them are mowed turf. They're all in some state of no mow.
And nothing, this is the one that's closest to a neighborhood, but it's downhill from it.
Yeah.
So, whereas last year's, they were closer in a lot of the neighborhood parks.
Anyone have any questions on these spots for me?
It would be nice to have a motion saying you approve these or recommend them. Ready?
Is there a motion? Second.
All in favor? The motion, the motion is to approve the prairie planning as recommended by Parks and Department. All in favor?
Aye.
And was it Chris who
Seconded, yeah. He second, Chris second.
Okay, thank you.
Either.
Alex.
Yeah. Alex and Chris. So whichever order you want. Yeah, whichever you type first.
Got it.
Went quick. All right, item number 6, the reports. Julie?
I don't have anything else tonight.
Hello, everybody. Just been quiet over there, but now it's my time. Now it's my time to shine. So I just wanted to give you a few quick updates on what's happening with Recreation Division side of things, and then give you an update on what's happening with the master plan study that we're in the midst of right now. So fall programming is underway here. We really kind of kick that off next week. So if you haven't had a chance yet, please feel free to go to our webpage and check out the activity guide that we have going on there. Have a lot of different things going on this fall and some different special events in there too. We're also kicking off our Root for Trees program again, which this is going to be the second year that we did that. We had a great turnout last year for that. So the program will run September 15th through May 15th of next year. And if you recall, it's an application that you go to online. So it's icgov.org/root4trees. Root for Trees is the program. And you can fill out an application if you're an Iowa City resident. And if you're approved, which most people are if you're an Iowa City resident, that you own the property or you have permission from your landlord to plant a tree on that property, you can receive a voucher for 50% off the purchase price. And if you're income eligible, you can receive a tree for 90% off. And $250 is the maximum value, so if you receive 50% off, it's up to $125 off a tree. If you receive an income eligible voucher, it's $225 off a $250 tree, so a pretty good deal there. So we're partnering with, once again, Earl May and Iowa City Landscape, and they're both gung-ho about doing this program again. Got a lot of people through their doors last year, and one of the things that we were all kind of talking about before we really kind of launched this underway, kind of looking at tree varieties. There was a lot of maples that were planted last year. It was actually 21% of the trees that we had redeemed. So we actually are limiting that and pear trees this year. So I know Chuck over at Iowa City Landscape was in favor of that. So he was actually pretty excited that we were making that limitation this year. So applications go live on Friday. So if you guys want to apply, feel free to do so and share it with your friends.
Yeah, press release came out today.
Yes.
I saw it in the-
Yep. Yep. And then the one other update that I want to provide you with about recreation is now that we're finally back up and running with our pools, we're going to be closing down one of our pools at the end of this month. We're going to be doing a much needed dehumidification project over at Mercer. So if any of you have ever been in there and thought it was pretty hot and sticky in there, yeah, it needs some work. So we're going to be shutting that down September 28th. It's kind of our target date, and then looking to open that back up around mid-November. So we've been working with, because City High uses that pool for
Swimming.
We've been working with the Coralville Parks and Recreation Department to host practices. Some of the practices will be here, host practices and some of the meets over at their pool. So good partnership there. And then as far as the recreation master plan, just going to provide a brief update on what's happening with that. So there's a lot of different things that are working behind the scenes. We officially kicked off the project on, I think it was August 11th last time that we met. So Barry Dunn came out and they met with you. They met with our steering committee, they met with our recreation division staff, and then they talked a lot with Julie and myself also kind of on the planning portion of that. So in the meantime, since then, Julie and I have been meeting with them pretty much about every week, kind of talking about planning, what we want to ask for questions, how we want to do the social engagement. There's 4 different consultants that are working on this project too, that kind of have different areas of expertise. So Barry Dunn made their site visit on that date. They took a look the very next day at all of our facilities, took a walk around with our staff. And then they also toured some of the athletic facilities, some of the other things that would be involved with this project as well. And then we've also had Hitchcock Design Group, who's involved with the athletic field part of this study. They came out and did their site visit first part of August. And then we've also had the WT Group, which they're involved with the ADA transition plan updates. So they came out and took a look at that. They're also having another person on their aquatic lead team coming out later this week to meet with our aquatic staff and take a look at all of our aquatic facilities. And then we'll also have the Williams Group coming out at a different time to look at our recreation centers. And they have some parts with our swimming pool too. So that's on the facility side. So as Julie mentioned, a lot of that goes towards kind of how we prioritize use and improvements in the future. Another huge component of this master plan study is the community engagement portion. So, so there's several different parts that are happening there. We have our steering committee, which on our steering committee we have representatives from our city, from our Parks Commission, and then 5 different well-connected organizations throughout the community that are going to be able to kind of get us involved with the vision, but then also the connections to be able to really put the community engagement portion out there. We've also created a list of focus groups that we'll be utilizing that cover the wide gamut of a lot of different organizations throughout the community, whether it's businesses, disability advocate groups, cultural affiliates, social service groups. So there's probably 7 different focus groups that we're looking at having Barry Dunn lead that kind of serves a dual purpose. Not only do we get the perspectives of the people that are representing those organizations, but we're also able to leverage a lot of their connections to be able to get the community engagement out to the rest of the neighborhoods and residents. In addition to that, we're working on a site called Social Pinpoint. So that's going to have surveys and forums and idea walls so people can go onto the site and submit their ideas, their thoughts, their perspectives, their wants, their desires, all of that stuff for what they want to see for recreation in the future. But that's just one side of things, because we know not everybody has access to the internet. So we want to make sure that we can connect with people in a lot of different ways. So with the different events that we're going to be having this fall, we're doing 8 different wreck and rolls. Those are going to be on Sunday afternoons at different parks from 3 to 5 p.m. And we're also got a dog swim actually coming up this Sunday. That's the last day of the City Park pool. We've got a National Hispanic American Month event that's happening here. We've got farmers market events, Halloween, and we've got some other opportunities that we're going to be out in the community engaging with people. So one of the meetings that I had last week with Barry Dunn was looking at, with these booths, what are we going to do to provide engagement opportunities. So we've got 5 or 6 different ideas that are going to encourage people to come in. They're not just talking to people, they're actually interactive features that will kind of cover the gamut of all the different things that we're wanting to find out from residents and what they're wanting for recreation. So with that whole slate of different things, we're hoping to be able to really get a lot of feedback from the community and see what they want. Any questions on any of that?
For the Roots for Trees program, do we have any sister program that would be for like small businesses or land owner or landlords or anyone who's not like a private resident participated in something like that?
So businesses can participate in that.
Oh, they can?
Yeah, we actually had a bank participate in that last year,
Oh,
just one bank.
Okay,
But-
because yeah, I read through it and it was like, it definitely said like very heavily like residential. So I was like,
Yeah, and maybe that's something that we could provide some additional clarification.
Yeah,
on.
because I
But if the businesses have their own property and they're in Iowa City,
awesome.
we don't have an issue with that. Yeah. As far as landlords, we worked with last year with some of the different neighborhood groups to try to get information out to the landlords that have multiple properties. But what we're kind of finding out on feedback from that was it's almost viewed as an obstacle that they have to mow around and that they try, which is unfortunate. But there's a lot of property owners that when they have multiple places that they're having to take care of, don't want to have to mow around another tree.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
I'll keep mine really brief since we covered a lot of the projects and progress and everything already. Most of it will be tree related, but before I jump into trees, a REAP grant, we submitted that last week. So we'll wait to hear back on that. We had to wait, it was a little delayed about a week or so this year because we were waiting on census numbers. The unfortunate thing with REAP with our census numbers is we were less than 200 people off of being able to apply for the next level of funding.
City grow.
So our cap will, for the next 10 years, I would imagine, unless they change the rules, or as long as REAP's around still then, will be 200,000, which is still a lot of money. It's a good sized project for us. So the amount we applied for Ryerson's Woods for restoration work was 200,000. We'd be combining that with a small, almost $20,000 grant that we got for participating in a climate action type pilot program. So we're going to combine some of those funds. So we at least have a little bit. If the full thing doesn't come, we'll do at least a small piece of that project. Other news, good news for grants. We received a $5,000 grant from the DNR for a derecho recovery grant. So we will be planting 42 trees with that money plus our 50% match at Weatherby Park on October 2nd. So you're all invited. We're trying to get the neighborhood district involved. I know they've put it out on Facebook as well. We have involved They hope to use it as a kickoff for their 40th year coming up next year, a way to kind of engage the community. So we'll have some of those experts being able to pair them up with, even if someone's never planted a tree before, there'll be plenty of chance to learn. We'll have a couple of staff members there, and then hopefully someone from DNR. We hope to get our district forester out as well, or one of the other DNR staff to kind of help show planting techniques and stuff like that too. So using it as not just planting in the park, but also planting to show how they can plant their trees if they decide to apply for the Root for Trees vouchers.
What time is that at?
Yes, it's at 10, I believe. We will try to update as we get a little bit closer. Well, we won't have another meeting before
We
then.
can do an email to you though.
Yeah.
We got a couple things we need to update you on probably midway this
Yeah.
time.
I'm 99% sure it's 10 o'clock about the time I say that. We do have another grant, as you'll remember, Rotary helped us plant trees at Court Hill Park last spring. And so they applied for a grant to the larger Rotary organization. And they got $5,000 for this fall and another $5,000 for spring. So we're planting similar sized trees, the smaller ones we had, still, most of them shoulder height, but smaller than, some other ones you can see. Plant 100 trees with them on Saturday, October 23rd. And those will be spread between Kiwanis, Willow, and Villa Park, so that corridor of parks there. So, with our Court Hill project, our Weatherby project, and then these other 3 parks, we kind of hit all portions of the city. And we'll think about spring, maybe it's an further east side park than Court Hill for the spring. We'll stop to decide that. But lots of good tree stuff there. The 2 of you that are on tree advisory, we still plan to have a meeting Friday. I'll send out an agenda. I hope to get that out to you all tomorrow. We had a good first meeting back after a little pause like a few months ago. So we have some new partners with the university, the school district, the county. So we've got some good input there. Hope to get a few more numbers from the Root for Trees, looking at the data that Brad and staff compiled from that. So we'll be doing that. And I think those are the main things. And we're continually watering. We plant a lot of trees, so that's what most of the substantial number of staff hours go into that this year, even more than in the past. So, any questions? Anything?
Just go back a few years. I don't remember when we discussed it, but we did it when we were discussing the overall urban canopy assessment. There was ongoing projects that were going on in Hickory Hill regarding sort of the removal of, I think, regarding removal of invasives and stuff. Is that just sort of an ongoing when you have time, or is that needing funding, or?
Good question.
Sort of
Yes. So currently there's still work happening as part of 2 REAP grant cycles. So $400,000 total that we had 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and then the year before that. So the work, if any of you have been out there, there's still some work happening. I have a contractor working on some of that. Staff does some as they can, but currently that's been the bulk of it. The Friends Group does some work, and they also have a planned project they have contracted out for some of the one of the areas off the Conklin Lane entrance, or the north entrance, has a lot of shrubby material they have planned to remove with the contractor. So a little bit of everything, really. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Question?
Curious about attrition with all the new leaf trees that have been planted. It seems like, I know you're working so hard to keep them all watered, but I'm seeing so many that just look a little
Yep.
not so great.
Yeah, so we have some that, especially one of the species we planted, or we had a contractor plant in the Mackinac Village neighborhood. A substantial number of the service berries did not make it through establishment. They will have to go back and replace replace those before that contract is up and they can get paid for that. So we'll be replacing those. Most of ours that we did with the volunteers this spring did really well. We found that they did a good job planting. We've been able, the smaller trees, keep up on those. So that's something we're finding. We're pushing our acceptable standards for minimum like caliper or the diameter around the trunk size down, keeping it strong enough so it can't just be snapped right off, but lowering that a little bit so the trees have, they're younger and they tend to establish a little bit quicker. So we're trying a little bit of everything, but yeah, we will always lose some. Some locations just are difficult, riverfront crossings, difficult location for even grass. So we see a lot of struggle for the trees and spots like that too. Yeah, good question. Anyone else have any tree or park related things we want to cover?
Thanks, Tyler.
Yeah.
Chair's report, I don't have anything, just wanted to commend your staff on the social media. There's a lot of stuff coming out. I learned a lot from that, so I know that was sort of a focus, and I think it's noticed it, so kudos. We'll go around for, if anybody has anything. Brianna?
No.
Chris? April? I'll look first. Alex?
I've just enjoyed the sculptures that have been coming to the park, so as well, so it's been neat to see some of the different artwork as well. Besides that.
Thanks. Ben? Angie? Melissa?
The trail closures on Napoleon Park due to washout, is that's still closed?
It's
When
still
is
closed.
that?
It was a failure of the stormwater structure underneath the trail, so it's been a pretty complicated fix. I think you might be as long as the end of October unless Tyler has another update.
Yeah, within the week, the parts were at least 5 weeks out, plus then the contractor has to do the work. So it's 2 culvert sections right by each other that both failed. So manufacturing's been delayed with COVID type, supply chain delays. So we field questions every day about it, because I know it's a well-loved trail. And if people ask you about it, we can't just provide access around it because there's no safe way around it. If you see it, it looks like the trail's still intact, but there's really a hole half the size of this room right underneath the trail. So.
Oh, jeez.
Wow.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
I didn't get Alex together.